Hey everyone, a very good evening and morning to you. I'm Likita from Durga. Hope you all are doing okay. These times are rather hard for everyone, and we hope you're getting adequate time to rest and rejuvenate. I'm so excited to welcome you to this incredibly exciting webinar on AI, ethics, and evaluation. Thank you for choosing to be with us on a Friday. Over the next 75 minutes, you will listen to some of the best speakers and experts in the subject, people who do different things around people and the planet, people who work for social change from different perspectives, people for whom justice really matters. The agenda is quite straightforward. We'll first have our founder Priya share a little about Durga and why the topic on AI matters to us. We'll then move forward to the panel discussion with the amazing lineup of speakers. The panel will be moderated by Priya. Then we'll move on to the Q&A segment and close with a few words of gratitude from our end. So without further ado, I want to introduce Priya. She's an intersectional feminist who believes that every step towards dismantling Brahminical patriarchy will lead to gender justice someday. Priya founded Durga 15 years ago, first in her head, then in the pocket diary, that moved to the blog post, and then finally took legal shape to eventually start showing up in public spaces. Priya has been interested in social issues and people forever and hence ditched her CA career and worked in health, grant making, and social consulting. Over to you, Priya.
Thank you so much, Likita. It's funny because as participants join, all of the AI representatives are also joining to take notes. So hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for being here, choosing to spend your Friday here with us. We are a social justice organization working towards enabling safer, more equitable, and more inclusive public spaces. We were founded on the belief that freedom of movement is a fundamental right. And yet, for millions of women, girls, and other marginalized communities, navigating public spaces have involved negotiating fear, harassment, discrimination, and violence. For over 15 years, we have worked at the intersection of gender, safety, behavior change, and community action. Our work is grounded in a simple but powerful insight that violence is not only a problem between a perpetrator and a victim, it is also shaped by people, by institutions, structures, and systems around them. This has led us to focus on the role of communities in preventing violence. Through our active bystander program, we work with people who spend their lives in public spaces to identify the earliest symptom of violence and become the first responders to it. Over the years, thousands of people have become active bystanders through our programs, creating a culture where safety is seen not as an individual responsibility, but as a collective one. We're working on shifting the narrative from public spaces are unsafe for women to when violence is seen in public spaces, action will be taken. We work with governments, transport systems, corporations, and community institutions to build more responsive and gender-sensitive ecosystems. Our work has ranged from developing technology-enabled safety solutions such as the Durga Panic Alarm to influencing policies and strengthening community-based responses to violence. So at its core, Durga's work is about understanding people, how they make decisions, how social norms influence behavior, what motivates action, and what prevents it. And it is from this lens of human behavior, collective responsibility, and social justice that we come into today's conversation on AI. We believe that the problems of violence and discrimination are systemic and structural, and when communities that are most marginalized are not considered or consulted in building tools, such tools can only exacerbate this problem disproportionately. I understand that majority of AI is developed by cis-het men, and in that too, men of certain geographies, of certain color, heteronormativity, and possibly certain dominant caste, class, religion, and so on. It frightens me. Interestingly, Durga has always engaged with technology. Over a decade ago, we developed the Durga Panic Alarm because women repeatedly told us that in moments of danger, they needed a way to call for help. That work eventually contributed to broader conversations around emergency response and safety technology. But what we learned from this was profound. Technology can create an opportunity for action, but it cannot guarantee action. A panic button does not save someone because it exists. Someone must respond, someone must care, someone must decide that another person's safety matters. So the challenge was never only technological, it was structural, behavioral, and social. As AI enters research, monitoring, evaluation, and development practice, I think Durga's experience offers an important reminder to us. We should be careful not to confuse information with understanding, or efficiency with impact, or prediction with justice. Much of our work at Durga involves listening to women and communities whose experiences are often invisible in mainstream data. If the data itself reflects historical inequalities, AI may simply reproduce those inequalities at greater scale. If women, lower income communities, informal workers, people with disabilities, or caste marginalized groups are underrepresented, their realities can become even more invisible. We believe technology should strengthen human agency and not replace it. If AI can help us reduce administrative burdens, identify patterns, democratize knowledge, and make evidence more accessible, maybe that's valuable. But the future we should be aiming for is not one where machines make all the decisions. It is one where technology enables people and communities to make better decisions. Because ultimately, safety, justice, dignity, and social change have always depended on human beings choosing to act. And perhaps that is the question we should keep returning to today. How do we ensure that AI serves people, communities, and the planet, and not just efficiency, scale, or profit? So thank you so much, everyone. And Likita, back to you.
Priya, there's no point in handing over to me because it's time for the panel discussion. So over to you again, Priya.
Whoops. Thank you so much, Likita. Sorry about that. So welcome again, everyone who's been joining more recently now. I'm thrilled to be opening the much-awaited panel. We will be discussing some really critical issues around ethics, standards, and human judgment in evaluations. When we talk about artificial intelligence, the conversation often begins with what AI can do. It can process vast amounts of data, identify patterns, automate tasks, predict behavior, and potentially make research, monitoring, and evaluation faster and cheaper. But for those of us working in social justice, the more important question is, what is AI for? And equally, who is it for? Because technology is never neutral. It is shaped by the values, assumptions, and power structures of the societies that create it. As AI becomes embedded in research and evaluation, we need to ask difficult questions. Whose data is being collected? Who owns it? Who benefits from it? Who is invisible within it? And the concern is not simply that AI makes mistakes. The concern is that it can make inequity appear objective, scientific, and therefore harder to challenge. In development and philanthropy, there is often excitement about efficiency. Can AI analyze thousands of surveys? Can it code qualitative interviews? Can it generate millions of reports? And the answer probably to each of those questions is yes. But social change is not a manufacturing process. The same companies that drain out the resources of communities, particularly free and clean water, are the ones who profit most. Ironically, also end up funding the development of the same communities that they exploit through philanthropy. Ironic. The things that matter most are often the hardest things to measure. If AI helps us save time so that we can spend more time listening to communities, that is valuable. But if AI replaces listening altogether, then we may become more efficient while understanding less. There is also a planetary question that I would love to engage in this panel. AI requires enormous computing power, energy, water, and infrastructure. At a time when we are discussing climate justice, we must ask whether every AI application is even necessary. Not every problem requires an AI solution. Sometimes community knowledge, local wisdom, and human conservation remain the most sustainable technologies we have. So my biased view is very, very audible, loud, and clear. So perhaps the questions that I want to engage with in today's discussion is not whether AI is good or bad. It is how do we ensure that AI serves justice rather than efficiency alone? How do we ensure that human dignity remains at the center of our decisions? And how do we build systems where technology strengthens our humanity instead of replacing it? Those are the questions I hope we can explore together today. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, and I don't want to hog their time anymore. There will be 4 questions to each speaker, where the first and the last 2 are common questions for everyone for a quick minute or so reflection. The main question for each individual speaker is the second one. These are curated based on the experience and perspective that each of the speakers brings. I'd love to first introduce the speaker to you, and I'm going in the order that I have them visible. So first, I'd love to introduce Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan. Gayatri is the founder and chairperson of Sambhav Foundation, an organization committed to enabling sustainable livelihoods and improving the quality of life of vulnerable communities through education, employability, and entrepreneurship. Welcome, Gayatri. Next is Dr. Pavan Mamidi. Professor Pavan Mamidi is a behavioral economist and the director of the Center for Social and Behavior Change, CSBC, at the Ashoka University. His work spans 2 key areas: law and policy on emerging technologies, including privacy, AI, and autonomy, and applied behavioral science. Welcome, Pavan.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shohini Mukherjee. Shohini is a project director at JPAL South Asia, where she leads the Capacity Accelerator Network, a Welcome and MasterCard Center of Inclusive Growth-supported initiative that strengthens data and AI capability in climate and health by building both talent pipelines and organizational capacity. Welcome to you as well, Shohini. Our next speaker is Arjun Khandelwal. Arjun is the co-founder of Samanvay Research and Development Foundation, where he works with grassroots organizations to design and implement technology systems that strengthen field programs and social impact. Welcome to you, Arjun. Our next speaker is Anagha Shivprakash. Anagha is an aerospace engineer with over 5 years of experience working with a US-based aerospace organization. She's passionate about increasing representation for underrepresented communities in STEM and has led several STEM-focused initiatives that align with the cause. Welcome, Anagha. Our next speaker is Surendran Krishnan. Suren is a CSR and ESG leader with over 15 years of experience spanning technology, sustainability, volunteering, and social impact. His work includes advancing STEM education, digital inclusion, green skilling, responsible use of emerging technologies, and large-scale employee volunteering. Welcome to you, Suren.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sonia Fernandez. Sonia brings extensive expertise across South Asia's nonprofit, research, and philanthropy sectors with a focus on decentralized clean energy, renewable energy, investments, and the food-water energy nexus. Welcome to you, Sonia. This is our spectacular range of speakers, experience from grassroots work to data collection, to analysis, to evaluation, to behavior science, to climate, to funding, to philanthropy. So there's a huge expertise here, and we would hope that all of you are able to gain a lot from all that they're going to say. So my first question is to all of you, and I will read out the question and then I'll ask Gayatri this question first and then move on from there. So each of you gets about 45 seconds to a minute to reflect on this. The question is, where do you see AI being used in your field right now? And what is one way it has changed how decisions or evaluations are done? Over to you, Gayatri.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for organizing such a interesting panel, and um, I think the question is very valid. I think for all of us, it's a bit like a tsunami in the development sector, right? In in the work that I do, it is often deciding what work is considered good or bad. So I'll take a minute to give you an example of an evaluation which went so wrong. Uh, you know, the AI determines whether the company exists or not. And many people in the smaller enterprises do not renew their Udyam on time. Very small, it may look like an extremely small thing. All that work is considered as irrelevant because they are now saying CSR leads into BRSR. Therefore, it all has to work together. So nobody's been able to define CSR, let alone BRSR. And therefore, I think the problem that I see is who is auditing is also a question. So the system audits, and then there is no human involved in this entire thing. So you end up talking to chatbots who you have to clarify to. And this was one of the extreme evaluations that we saw. We're gearing up to it. And I think in the last 6 months, we've become quite the champ at it. But I feel it's the most alienating form of the way in which AI has done. And in my opinion, it hallucinates. So it's hallucinating so much that it's believing the data that it wants to believe, and it's therefore negating the entire informal sector work completely.
Thank you so much, Gayatri, and we'll come back to you to dig deeper. Over to you, Nini, with the same right now.
Is this for me, Priya?
Yes, Pavan, you could go as well. So the first question is for everyone to just reflect for
So
about
am I in
45
line
seconds.
now, or is it someone else?
I had called out to Sohini,
No,
but you can go
Sohini
since you've
go.
unmuted.
No, I'd rather let Sohini go for it.
Okay. Over to
Okay, thanks, Priya, for organizing this on such an important topic. So, just to kind of quickly introduce who am I and situate JPAL into all of this. So, JPAL essentially was started more than a couple of decades back. Our mission is broadly to reduce poverty by ensuring that policies are driven by scientific evidence. Essentially, working directly with governments, with NGOs, with donors, with researchers to understand what works, what doesn't work, and why, right? And increasingly, I think, as you rightly mentioned,
I think
have we lost Sohini? Yeah. Just give it a second. Otherwise, Pavan, we'll move to you for a quick 45-second reflection on how you use AI. And then when Sohini comes back, we could get her
No,
back.
thank you so much. Thanks, Priya, for including me in this wonderful conversation. I'll get straight to the point. So there are a couple of ways of looking at how AI intersects with my world. I'm a behavior scientist. I'm an applied behavior scientist, and a part of my work is empirical. A part of it is programmatic, and evaluation is a key part of the work that I do. So I'm going to cut it into two layers. The first layer is in terms of data elicitation itself, which is a seriously an empirical kind of an endeavor. AI can be a pretty powerful tool. So I'll give you an example. We created an AI platform, a machine learning platform, that detects whether women are victims of domestic violence or not. If you were to go into a rural village in Uttar Pradesh, a lot of them are not forthcoming with information about them being beaten up by their husbands or their family members. And so we decided that we will use machine learning and we will create a sort of an app which allows a frontline health worker approach these people, ask innocuous questions, and with a fair degree of certainty establish whether the person is likely to be a victim of violence or not. So basically, you're able to elicit information which you would not otherwise been able to obtain using social means. So that's a pretty powerful um, application of AI. Yeah, sure. There are sort of costs to it in terms of privacy and so on. We can have a larger discussion. We can do a utilitarian calculus to establish whether the benefits outweigh the costs in terms of privacy. But I do think that violence against women is an egregious crime against humanity. And if AI can serve us there, that's fantastic. So in terms of being able to obtain data which you would not otherwise be able to, I think it's a very, very powerful tool. There are challenges. We can discuss that in greater detail. The second opportunity lies in the fact that AI can manage heterogeneity of information or data. Hitherto, you did surveys and so on, and you picked up far fewer variables. But now AI is able to assimilate a much larger quantity of data, a much larger number of covariates, which can also be sociological. So in some sense, it can help us reconcile the sociological granularity that sociologists have been pursuing with the rigor of economists, right? So there's a huge promise there. And Sendil Mullainathan has talked about this. But in terms of evaluation itself, I do think that it has a limited role because it has had a limited role because AI is fundamentally an observational paradigm. It doesn't have causal analysis. And insofar as it doesn't have causal analysis, for you to be able to draw a causal relationship between an intervention that you have introduced and the desired effect that you propose for society, it's not it's not uh, as useful as one imagines it to be. Or I mean, I need to be convinced of its application. Let me pause there. Thank you. Those are my quick
Thank,
points.
thank you so much, Pavan, and Sohini is back. Just wanted to say that this question is a very quick 45-second reflection so that
Sure.
we can move to the main question um, with each speaker. But if you want to spend more time in it, then we can actually
Get back to
alter
it.
the
Yeah.
course. So let's go with however you feel. So, Sohini, back to you. I hope everything's fine.
Yeah, so I think that is an example of when you believe in technology, technology can fail. And essentially, that's why, JPAL exists, because I think broadly what we are trying to understand is not so much on whether the technology can function technically, but also whether it actually improves the outcome for people, the point that Priya, you very succinctly mentioned. So we have several such examples worldwide where JPAL is directly evaluating AI to see whether it works in improving the outcomes for people. So just a very quick example, JPAL affiliates Rohini Pandey. She's working directly with Google, where she in Bihar, where one of her study is looking at um, just how can we leverage AI in flood forecasting systems. So not necessarily trying to see whether AI does a good job at predicting it, but more on whether these warnings actually help the vulnerable households prepare, protect assets, and improve resilience. So, again, to the point of justice, equity, I think those are the key aspects of the evaluation. I think, secondly, in my field, I think to answer your question, where do I see, and there are several such examples, I'll not get into each and every one of them. So, in addition to the service delivery aspect of it, where at times technology can fail, technology can also do a good job. I think there are also, like, folks at World Bank very recently did a fantastic job on evaluating how evaluation itself is done and which parts of evaluation AI can do a good job of. And very quickly, my top line summary of this is what they understood is when it comes to tasks where human supervision is possible, things like coding, AI actually does a good job. It is only where, we are trying to give too many directions to AI, and at times where we are actually relying on AI So if there is no knowledgeable person reviewing the output, things like reviewing or literature review of multiple documents, AI start hallucinating, Priya, to your point. So essentially, I think when it comes to evaluation, um, uh, evaluating programs either which way becomes even more urgent at the age of AI. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Shohini. Over to you, Suren. Would love to know your 45 seconds to a minute reflection on where do you see AI being used in your field?
Sure. So from the CSR and ESG angle, AI is widely used now in evaluating the RFPs, report writing, seeing what sort of data comes in, what sort of impact from the data collected, and storytelling. So majorly, it is, while I could tell that it is solving a lot of problems that this sector had, or say we do receive n number of RFPs, which took a lot of time to review, but AI could do that in minutes. But is that right? There is there is a question, because I have a recent example where we called in proposals for climate action related projects, and we had received 200 such proposals, and AI could tell that only 5 organizations are valid for this. Now, is it true? It is not, because I could see that the organization that applied did not probably use the AI to have that keywords which AI could catch. So there is a gap in that. We had to go through each and every applications before even taking the inputs of what AI actually said. But on the other side, storytelling for nonprofits which did not, which nonprofits were struggling to tell the actual story from the ground, AI is now fairly helping, is what I feel. We could bring out the story in a more appealing way to tell, not just for donors, but even to show it to the world what sort of impact that the nonprofits are creating. I see that as a positive sign. So in my field as such, this is how it is used. I see both the
Thank you so
sides.
much. Thank you so much, Suren. On a lighter note, now I know why my application never makes it to a grant. Okay. Sonia, I'm coming to you from the angle of the planet and the way you look at it as an environmental activist, but importantly from that the space of philanthropy as well. Where do you see AI being used in your field now, and what is the decision of change that you've seen because of AI?
Thanks, Priya. I was thinking about the resume screening process and when you were going I think there's a lot of anxiety because even AI tools are used for resume screening, same with RFP. Um, so luckily or unluckily, we have not been getting the bulk of proposals like the way Surrender has, and we have been doing we've been screening the proposals. At the same time, I feel that there was a lot of pressure on the philanthropy to start using AI and also fund AI, right? At the same time, there is this entire I'm being very candid about it, a kind of a blanket dialogue that let's fund AI without actually understanding where is AI in the entire spectrum right now, right? And the AI right now is evolving, it's generative AI. Do we fund it? And I think that this is the right time to actually fund it to bring certain amount of structure in it. And but also coming from the climate change angle, and I think I'll get into it in the next question, is that climate change is perhaps the best place for AI to be tested. And it is also a tangible, a non-tangible, a personal, a non-personal space, automated and non-automated space, right? So I feel that this is the area. We have tried using AI for basically that entire intersectionality of climate change and gender. It's not really worked very well, right? Because it gives you what it's fed, which is the data trained that the AI is trained with. That's exactly what it churns out. But I'll get into it later, perhaps.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I'm coming to you, Anagha, with this question. So, as a user, where do you see AI in your field of work, and also as a young user of technology and AI?
Thanks, Priya, for this opportunity, and very glad to be here. Two things. One is just in terms of my work, obviously use it to automate workflows, just mundane tasks, which used to take up a lot of time but doesn't really add value to my work, is something that I've sort of beginning to outsource to AI. But also, I'm from one of those fields which has been slow to adopt AI for, like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I can speak for the larger tech community, right? Which is a lot of my friends that I talk to, they say that there's an agent that monitors what they are coding, because one day it's going to automate and that job is going to go to them. So in a way, we're also seeing that pressure of, hey, AI is going to probably take my job. But at the same time, there's also this push from corporates, and obviously in hiring and resume filtering, AI is being used, but also just in terms of as employees, there's a push towards using AI just to be more efficient. While that is good, but it also depends in terms of how employees are using AI, because just for the heck of it, now they have to use AI because the company is told you need to use this amount of tokens or you're going to be fired. Like, I've literally heard people say that. So it really depends in terms of how you're using it and for what reasons, and that's where I believe that discernment comes in. And in conversations like this are obviously more important in terms of why and for what.
Thank you so much, Anagha. And to you, Arjun, the same question to you for your reflection.
Yeah, thanks, Priya. I mean, I of course, like as a software engineer, and then like our organization, Samanvay Foundation, we set it up majorly to help non-profits adopt technology, use quality software in a sustainable manner and practical manner to scale their impact. So the pressure was high on us when AI came, and even non-profits are looking at us to adopt technology. How should they go about it? And so, I mean, of course, we started adopting ourselves first. In terms of value, we are seeing it is creating significant value in software development, communication, documentation, and operational decision making. For example, we have a product for frontline data collection called Avni. It's an open source platform. And we create custom applications on top of it for the non-profits. What used to take earlier weeks to create a custom application is now getting done in days. So that is reducing all like cost, timelines, friction, and all of that to reach to ground, for the impact to reach to ground as such. On the decision making, I mean, the yesterday only we were having a debate whether a particular sales lead should be marked as warm or cold. Now that's a pretty standard sales function, but we don't have dedicated people for each of these roles, being a small non-profit organization. So here, I mean, we asked AI, and it gave a systematic reasoning on what it could be and all of that. So that helped make us decisions on those front faster, improvise our SOP, and so on. So, I mean, it is definitely helping with faster decision making and taking things to ground, really. I think AI overall helps wherever. I think it is good at augmenting human judgment. I mean, we, of course, have to be careful about not replacing it really. And just a point to Anaga, in fact, the industry is now starting to see a reverse of that as such. So where adoption was the first stage, but now efficiency, it has come to efficiency. Now companies are rationing the tokens. Now they are checking whether if it is getting used really for, like, it is giving that productivity or not. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Thank you so much, Arjun. So what stayed with me of what you said, Gayatri, was this one word, tsunami, right? And so, yeah, I think I very much resonate with it, maybe because we're coming from a very similar space and rooted in a very similar way. So my question to you is, we often hear that AI is neutral and objective, right? But many AI systems still reproduce gender, caste, racial, and social biases. So Why does this happen, and what does it say about who owns, operates, and controls AI?
So thank you, Priya. So I'm actually going to veer a little bit away from this to discuss, our love-hate relationship with AI. Um, uh, so one of the things we've been working on for the last year, because I think it's inevitable that it's going to be part of our lives, right? So it's a spouse and in-law that one has to live with. So thinking about it, what we attempted to do was to see, are there ways for us to give people an ability to see where enterprises existed in their neighborhood? We said, what if we say that AI is a tool and that tool can be used by anybody? So we used AI to scrape crores of data, across multiple platforms, and identified where enterprises were available. And that has taken us months of work. But now, what we want to do is give it to not-for-profit community animators, self-help group leads, farmer producer organizations, so they can then actually do what Arjun was saying. They can actually go there and input whether that enterprise has people and has exists per se. That means they feed into whether it exists or not. So we use the same formula like you do for saying there's an accident, right? Or the Namakasa kind of thing, saying, okay, because we have such a large data set, if the more people say that this enterprise exists, the enterprise exists. And we used very simple, formulas to say what is an enterprise by national standard. Right? We said we don't have to complicate it. It's nothing to do with us. Any legal entity at the smallest can also be. So what I told you first, actually, that plus our whole complication of saying, where are women needed? Women want hyperlocal jobs, but we're saying migrate. We're saying, all jobs where women are coming in are largely large industries, manufacturing, which is also important. I'm not denying it, but it was keeping them out, and it was ranking it, and it had nothing to do with AI. It is the way we're thinking also, right? Saying what job is good and what job is bad, without considering um, uh, you know, her contribution to the home and his limitations. So, because men have severe limitations in ability to participate, and we bring up our boys without um, ability to really participate in ensuring that there's equal ability to work. So, this platform, we hope, will mean that, and where a job is, will be co-created. It's not the AI alone, it's going to be also the field staff and the AI. But it does give a roadmap. So it follows a very simple, sales beat for a distributor, right? It says, okay, these are enterprises, please go check, are they open vacancies? And then we are back tracking it with a apprenticeship model. So that at a certification level, it gives you validity. At the work level, it gives you validity. So I think this came from our learning of, if we have AI control, what job matching should be. Who should come, who shouldn't come, what is good, what is bad. It is intrinsically going to, as I said, hallucinate. And it's going to repeat patterns which we've already seen. Nothing new, nothing out. So we said, listen there. Second thing we've been attempting to do is, like, for whom are jobs? Is it for young? In India, if you look at the skill and jobs, we're practically thinking 18 to 23. What happens after that? What happens to women who are 35? What happens to young people, I would say, but more so it has deep implications for women. So I think where I'm coming from is it has to be intentional. That means the those of us who are users need to now really think of ourselves saying that, you know what, we need to be in the driver's seat. If we are not going to hold it by its horn and say, you know what, move in this direction, it's likely to really it's likely to harm rather than do good. So I feel my first reaction, actually, if I look at last year, was, my God, it's writing research papers. It's practically telling you what you need. It's even calculating SROIs. It's doing everything. Then why do we need to be there? But over time, I think the last 6 to 8 months has been about, okay, what can it do? Which, you know, I'd like to see myself as this nice. You know, in Tamil, you'd say party, like grandmother who's saying, listen, I have experience and knowledge, and let's like drive it in the way we want. Then what's the thing, right? Then are we able to control the narrative? I think that's the narrative in every field. See, I'm talking of education, skills, and jobs, but it could be in any field. We picked one sliver and said, in one sliver, is it possible to do? And I'm happy to see that you can. But I think we should not assume it's neutral. We should not assume that everything it gives us is correct. Therefore, validate. That means apply back the research principles that one followed, then validate it. And who validates it matters. So validate it with the people who are closest to the communities. Give the ownership there. I think that's really where we are driving.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. I think it's a great segue to come back to you, Arjun, because Gayatri is speaking about validating, right? And therefore, your work is all about data. So my question to you, actually, this question is in two parts. One part is for Arjun and the other part is for Anagha. So the first part, Arjun, to you, is when communities share their data for research or evaluation, who ultimately owns that data? And do people have meaningful consent, agency, and control over how it's used, stored, repurposed by these very same AI systems?
Uh, yeah, Priya, interesting question. I mean, when we talk about community data and I think ownership is actually the last question we should ask. Before ownership, I think we need to ask three questions. Why was the data collected? Who contributed to creating it? And where is it ultimately being used? Uh, Most people share data for a particular purpose, like receiving good health care, or for a research and evaluation, or improving local services. Uh, and the trust is built around the original purpose, why the data was collected for. Uh, the second question is who contributed to creating the data. In a very recent use case we implemented where we integrated Avni for oral screening, which was with an AI model. And the AI model was built by 30,000 images that were collected through patient screening and was given by a foundation from their camps, etc. Uh, Now, when we look at a data set, I think we shouldn't only see technology, we should see the humans behind it, like the patients whose data it was that they gave that data, field workers who collected that data, clinicians who labeled that data, and then researchers and engineers who created model and data sets around that, really as such. So it's like, I mean, so the value is not generated just by the algorithm. It is like by the communities, and they remain essential part of this whole value chain. The third question is where this data is ultimately getting used, and that's where I think like if I have given data for improving health services and that was communicated to me while taking the consent, for example, I mean, that is what it should be used for. And that's what there is something called as purpose limitation as part of the consent. And even in DPDP Act, it is covered that way. And we should stick to that, because otherwise, I mean, it's very easy to move around data and then use it for other purposes, but that will breach the trust eventually. So I mean, personally, I prefer the language of custodianship compared to ownership, where organizations who may manage data, store data, or even use data, but I think we should think that it is originated from people's lives and experiences. And so automatically, when we think of custodianship rather than ownership, the responsibility comes about privacy, transparency, security, and ethical use. And a most important parameter in my mind, at least, of ethical use is like whether the benefit of that technology is going back to the community, whether the loop is getting closed. So, for example, if in this use case of oral cancer screening, where the images were collected from the community, so in this case, we have integrated it with an open source platform. The model will be available publicly as a digital public infrastructure, and eventually it will help screen more people from the community and wider communities. So it's like giving back to the community, and that is very important, like closing that loop as such. And that is where I think the ethical use really stand.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I like the reference of custodianship a lot. So, Anagha, I'm coming to you as a user of AI. How should we grapple with the ethical implications of relying on systems that generate value and profit from the extraction of people's knowledge, experiences, and labor, often without their recognition, consent, compensation, or accountability?
Yep. Thanks, Priya, again for that question. When I thought about this question, it was just my mind. My mind at least went to two places. One is just in terms of like technical data, and you're just using it for building systems and engineering and whatnot. There, I feel like it's still fine because you're using it essentially to build new technology. You're trying to get new products. You're trying to take those products to market and whatnot. But the other bit, which I think I personally at least have an issue with, is just in terms of experiences centered around lived experiences of people, right? Like just storytelling and art and things that are very inherent to like the lived experience of a person. And I was talking to a friend who was just recently telling me that they had mixed two distinct singers and created a new music using AI. And I was like, how is that even legal? Because did those like musicians even consent to doing this? And then this person's response was that obviously not. But if I had just used only one musician's voice and created this song, that's grounds for a lawsuit, because that's just taking without consent and using it for like profit or whatever. But because I mixed two distinct voices, it's become a third distinct voice now, and no one has grounds to sue me for this. So there are cases like this where obviously people are using things that are existing out there and for profit and for like malicious intent, but it becomes at that point, whose burden is it? Is it the responsibility of the user that's trying to do things like this, or is it the responsibility of the model providers that sort of like lay guardrails around how it can be used and whatnot? But obviously when there's so many people interacting with AI, it just becomes very difficult to sort of control and see what is going on, because especially now you see there's just like a lot of AI slop in general, right? Like videos are being created. And funnily, like another friend of mine was just telling that how his parents were very convinced of an AI generated video, which was obviously fake, to be real. And this was obviously aging parents, and they thought that this was like an elephant that had gone to a temple and carried the temple or something like that. And they thought that was real. And they're like, how is this even possible? But the point that I'm trying to make over here is people are using AI to generate slop, but people are also getting convinced that this is real. So this is where I believe having that nuance in terms of what is actually being used for and why is very important. And somewhere I feel like that burden, it needs to be pushed to model providers in order to be better informed when they're providing these solutions, and when they're saying this, they need to have processes or checks in place to pull down content like this, pull down misleading stuff like this. So I feel like somewhere that responsibility lies with people that create these models, because it's simply inconvenient for users to distinguish between the two. So just to answer that, figuring out and sort of like understanding where the boundaries are becomes very difficult for a common man. Hence, probably, I don't know, like governments and public policy experts should push the model providers to be a little bit more ethical and flag these things out more explicitly, saying this is AI. I know that it says AI generated, but just a little bit more explicit in that sense.
Very true, Anagha. Thank you so much. And this accountability question comes to you next, Pavan. And I know it's a longish question, but then I'll try and sort of say it more clearly. So when AI systems cause harm, reinforce bias, or shape consequential decisions in research, evaluation, and service delivery, who should ultimately be held responsible? Is it developers, the organization deploying the technology, the policymakers, or the companies that build and profit from these systems? Because we know that it's complex and opaque as such with these AI models. So how clear is accountability in practice? Pavan, your microphone's on mute.
Thank you. So again, I divide this into two components. When we talk about accountability, we need to talk about it almost from the point of view of the jurisprudence of harm, right? When something causes harm, whom do you hold responsible for the harm, right? Now, one of the ways that law seeks to address that is by attributing intention. Has the harm been caused intentionally or not, right? And oftentimes the intention cannot be teased out because it's a machine and a machine doesn't have intention. So off the bat, you have to remove criminal law from even thinking about accountability of AI systems. So you need to evaluate it purely on the basis of harm as a tortious activity. Now, having said that, there are provisions for vicarious liability. And by vicarious liability, one means that it's not the machine that has held responsible for the harm, but you transfer the responsibility to the person who created the machine in some sense, right? So there is some jurisprudence to transfer accountability to the humans who have created or deployed the AI system. So that I think needs to be looked at. Now, having removed intentionality from our ability to judge accountability, we need to start evaluating harm purely and almost entirely from the point of view of whether the individuals took due care or not. Due care is a term that law and economics uses. How much of a resource have they expended in trying to anticipate every conceivable situation in the future? Have they done a reasonable job in doing that or not? And then make a decision as to whether those people should be held accountable or not, right? So this is harm analysis, the jurisprudence of harm analysis, the jurisprudence of torts then becomes highly relevant in building accountability. But there is a second and a more important, perhaps, way of looking at accountability, and that is interpretability, explainability in AI. So if AI makes a decision and we are going to use that decision, whether it in our administrative processes or in our policy or in our judicial processes, without being able to go back and explain why we arrived at that decision, removes transparency. And neural networks are notoriously bad at being amenable to explainability. You don't have causal explanations for why it arrived at a particular decision, given the complexity of heterogeneity and so on and so forth. So, in the absence of explainability, in the absence of interpretability, you're coming out with an outcome out of a black box. How are you then going to make a decision as to whether that outcome is good for you or not? So, accountability then becomes seriously challenged because of the loss of interpretability. Right? So to sum it up, two layers. One is harm analysis. Intentionality doesn't apply in this space because at least for now, we can't attribute intentionality to a machine. It's a bunch of resistors, transistors, and electronics. How do you find the ghost in the machine to say that this intended to cause the harm? It's not a crime in much the same way that human beings commit a crime. So it's not criminal. So it's entirely in the realm of torts and the jurisprudence of harm. So due care, there's economics of due care. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is interpretability. Unless we have some purchase of interpretability, how are we ever going to take care of accountability? And that is a philosophical challenge that we haven't been able to crack yet. And that keeps me up in the night. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pavan. I think it was really, really interesting, the two aspects that you brought out, and particularly the aspect of interpretability, because I think it's really the essence of a lot of things that we're all grappling with. Suren, my next question is to you. So continuing on the same lines of ethics, because we spoke about accountability and now we move to the ethical side. How does this become more complicated ethically when most AI systems are owned and controlled by a few large technology companies that social sector organizations start depending on, whether it's for data, whether it's for the tools, whether it's for the philanthropic funding? So how do you see ethics play here?
Yeah. So I don't see this as a new trend because our entire digital system or the applications that we use um, is currently dominated by a few organizations or handful of organizations. So if we could take example of how many of us even think of any other email platforms when we use it for our personal, it's predominantly managed by one or two companies, even for our daily use of email or any other daily usage. So AI is following that trend. There's nothing new that we could see here because uh, AI does come with huge costing as well, which not everyone could afford to set up. So, from a social sector or the development sector angle, all that we could do is to choose wisely on who whose service we could use. Um, uh, Deciding this is pretty much deciding either a NGO partner or who should we work with. That is where the decision comes from. How is your data handled? Could the organizations do at least some groundwork or some search on which platform to use? That matters. But the trend is going to follow on few big organizations owning it. But what would they do with that, and how organizations can, maybe if an AI organization is being seen not ethical, or the data is being breached, then the collectively more number of organizations taking a stand of not using it is where the bigger organizations will also change their strategy. So it is the users that will have to choose it wisely, I would see. But the challenge, we cannot have the development organizations create their own AIs. While there could be few that can do, but owning it will purely come from the bigger organization, which unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, we will have to bear with it, but only deal with it in a more effective way. I do see it that way.
Thank you so much, Suren. I think your answer was also very honest, right? And so very, very appreciative of that. My question next is to you, Sonia. because you come from the climate space. So, and you also did allude to a little bit of what I'm going to ask you. Do the benefits of AI in addressing climate change outweigh its environmental, ethical, and geopolitical risks?
Thanks, Priya. I mean, this conversation is that's happening right now is so useful and a lot of a good learning space for all of us, including me. I'd say that you said environment, ethical, and geopolitical, right? So I'd say that we need to break the three down. There is no a yes or a no answer to all of it, right? So if you look at the environment space, and I was surprised, AI is still expanding. It started, I think, about 5 years back, and it continues to expand. So we have a lot of countries who are setting up data centers, and these are huge data centers across the world, right? These data centers occupy space. They're very energy intensive. I was Another thing is that because these data centers occupy space are energy intensive and require a lot of cooling solutions, you have Microsoft and Google who were generally looking at sustainability reports initially and looking at sustainable ways of expanding their operations. Now suddenly you see a spike in a 40% or a 50% energy consumption, a huge amount of water being used, and these are places which are generally water stressed, right? It's not that water is accessible. Um, the second part is that when we when we use Google to generate one search, right? It is not as energy intensive, but when you use AI to generate a search, right? It takes 10 times more energy than Google does. If we are generating videos and images, imagine the amount of energy that each person is using. And right now, we have it on our phones, we have it on our laptops, we have it on our, I mean, we're using it every day. I don't know how many times. So we have not really calculated the foresightable burden of GHG or greenhouse gas emissions that will emit from AI itself. And generative AI is just evolving, right? So right now in India, we have about 200 centers, data centers, which are large centers, and Chennai is perhaps one of the largest ones, but we will have Bombay, Delhi, and other smaller hubs they will also start expanding. So the thing is that the environment burden is going to be very huge, right? It's not going to offset what AI can do for climate action. And no way it's going to offset that. The ethical burden is also going to be so in the climate action space. I can say that the ethical burden will still not emerge in all spaces because the evolution of climate action happened about 20 years ago, sometime 2001, when we had a lot of research, data, analytical reports that were generated before the action actually happened in climate, right? So you have to generate an evidence that climate change is happening before action actually happens. So that data still stayed with a lot of us, and I think a lot of that data is being used to train the AI right now. And these could be outdated data because it could be outdated, a mix of middle data, it could be updated data. So the AI is being trained on this data, which is very useful in the sense that it's giving you predictive patterns, it's giving you modeling, some modeling scenarios on weather that had taken a long time now is getting easier. It's also getting into precision agricultural practices. So basically, it's telling you precisely that this is what you need to do with your soil. Analyze your soil. This is what you need to do. What is the pesticide integrated pesticide management system that you have to take care of, or what is the fertilizer that you need to add in? That is superb. At the same time, it gives you deforestation data, right? So where is the deforestation happening now? When deforestation happens, policies are framed perhaps based on the deforestation data, but it's not taking the tribal community or the guardians of the forest into account, right? So it's making them them against a government kind of a situation. And you have policy reports and regulatory frames, perhaps being informed by these deforestation data. That's where we need to be very, very careful, is that we are not including the community in this entire generation of data. At the same time, you're not also perhaps including the community in solutioning on what next to do once the data is generated, right? And the reports that are generating the data are also the reports that are coming from AI, right? So there are so many layers to it with respect to ethics. Geopolitical risk, I think we've not arrived right now there, but I feel that it's important for us to start looking at who owns AI, which are the large companies that own AI, to understand that geopolitical risk is what we will arrive if we don't start asking these questions, and we need to have more whistleblowers and community from the ground asking the questions.
Thank you so much, Sonia. It's very scary to go and do a next search right now after what you've said. My question next is to you, Shohini, and I think it's a very critical question to get a response to. Why should we evaluate AI? Would love to understand that from you.
Thanks, Priya. I think some of the things that I heard up until now are issues of ethics, privacy, security, informed consent. Again, these are all great and important points. Again, these are important points when it comes to data as such, not just AI. It can be any data that you think of. You're collecting data. These are all valid concerns and issues that we should be thinking and engaging about. I think from purely as a tool, when we are thinking of using it in the development space, in particular, the idea is not that the tool in itself is bad or good. It is because technology perform very differently in real world than they do on paper, right? So just to kind of give a very quick example. So Priya, Durga is based in Karnataka. So again, this actually predates AI. So there was a time where in Karnataka, government was dealing with health worker absenteeism. So they came up with biometric devices, and they kind of wanted to roll it across the entire state to deal with absenteeism. This was World Bank funded. There was a lot of interest and hope that this would be the silver bullet that will solve for health worker absenteeism. But essentially, what the government had the foresight to do was it kind of set up an evaluation before they kind of rolled it out to the entire state. And what the evaluation saw was the technology in itself was working, that attendance records were generated, they were transmitted in real time, so things were working on the ground. But then when it came to the human behavior, so supervisors were often unwilling to act on the information because even when they heard that there was absenteeism, they were worried about taking penalties against doctor because that would be politically and administratively very difficult to implement. So the government had to scale down the program because they realized very soon that it would not work in real life, right? And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So when it comes to actually using as a development sector professional, when we think of whether it is for, I think one of you mentioned about agriculture extension programs, about disaster planning, about even like you're using AI in education, early childhood education, you're using AI for improving government capacity. There are several such examples of a lot of organizations like Rocket Learning, or organizations like Wadhwani AI, who are at the forefront of a lot of these innovations. I think the idea to also keep in mind is if we don't evaluate, we don't know whether it actually works in real life when we are deploying the AI, right? I think the second issue, which oftentimes again, I think it came out in many of the discussions, is um, because of AI, we have now the ability to influence decisions at an enormous scale. So if there are errors, if there are biases, if there are flawed assumptions, they can be scaled at and multiplied by that, right? So we therefore need to build in extensive validation and human review process before relying on AI generated outputs, because essentially they reflect this broader principle that AI should support human judgment, right? It should not replace human accountability, right? And you can essentially get to that only when you evaluate, and a human being is actually doing these evaluations, right? So essentially questions around under what conditions that AI actually improve people's lives whether it actually helps in last mile delivery, whether it is improving lives for whom, right, and at what costs. These are important questions that only an evaluation, if you do it well, you can be able to measure and quantify the impact, right? And these are questions that I think are very important questions that evaluators need to kind of answer to. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Shohini, and thank you so much, everyone. It has been a very, very like informative and amazing panel, just because there was a diversity in the kind of responses and also the kind of experience. And what gives me hope is not AI itself; it is the possibility that we can shape it and use it in the way it's to be done. And can we build AI that's accountable to communities rather than corporations? I think I'll lean to yes. Can we use it to democratize knowledge rather than concentrate power? I think that's also a yes. So, can it free practitioners from administrative burdens so that we can spend more time with people? I guess the answer to that is also yes. So, is it always needed? I don't know if that's true yet, but it can help and hasten our work, make it more efficient, make it scale at the level that we want to, but definitely not replace human minds. So with that, I would love to close my questions for the panel. So thank you so much, everyone, for very patiently responding to all of my questions. I now hand it over to Raj, who will ask you some questions that we've already got from the registration. So over to you, Raj.
Thanks, Priya. So my first question is AI really necessary, or are we just justifying its presence as we are sold to capitalism? So may I request Suren to take up this question?
Okay. Controversial. Okay, whether it is necessary or not, we will have to, as an the while the corporates would also, or whoever is developing would also analyze that, because we have seen in the past there are many applications which has stopped because of users not using it. So the need depends on the users, I would tell. The more the users are going to use it, it's going to be there. The when users stop using it, it's not going to be there. So I would see it that way, where if you ask whether there is a need, the need is there, because I see AI as reducing the administrative task, like Priya already mentioned in the start. How do we reduce that one using AI? So the need is there, but can AI do from a development sector? Can AI replace humans, replace evaluators? No, definitely not, I would tell, because there are problems that would come in the development sector which AI is not even currently aware of. So humans are the ones who will have to even load that there is a problem of this sort. So yes and no, I would tell, but not creating AI just for the sake of creating it, and just because their technology can be developed, it should not be developed. Do it based on the need is what I would suggest or tell. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Suren, for that. May I request Pawan to take up the next question? How can evaluators balance efficiency gained through AI with the need for contextual understanding and human empathy?
Um, um, okay. So one of the, I think, wonderful things about AI, which, there are people who have talked about it, is its ability to reconcile literally hundreds of covariates. The kinds of covariates that anthropologists and sociologists could observe when they go out into the field, right? I mean, so there has always been this sort of distinction drawn between the quantitative types and the qualitative types. And the qualitative types are able to observe things which don't somehow register in surveys and so on and so forth. So AI has the promise of reconciling the heterogeneity. So I think that's a tremendous opportunity. But can AI ever capture the tacitness of a lot of knowledge that's out there? I'm not sure. I mean, I do see disturbing videos every now and then. I'll give you an example. I saw this little video of a tailor in Bangladesh who has a camera strapped to his head, and as he is stitching the clothes, it's actually training a robotic system. So even the tacit knowledge, the part which you can't codify, which you can't represent in a survey, is now getting captured by these very invasive and intrusive mechanisms, right? So on one hand, that can be useful for empirical purposes, but on the other hand, the tragedy is, this image of this tailor is a very tragic one because that person is basically supplying information that would displace the person. So we need to also think about short-run efficiencies and the trade-offs with long-run harms. So what is immediately efficient from a short-run transactional point of view? Yeah, I get paid for putting a camera to my head, and so it might seem short-run efficient. But what am I doing in the process? At a collective level, at an aggregate level, we are literally taking that entire profession and placing it in the hands of robotics. And so there is a major concern of labor displacement. Now, who's to factor in that cost? That's really, really important. So on one hand, I do see the benefits in the short run, but I think it's about time that we also that we need to start looking at the long-term aggregate collective harm that it can pose to society. Yeah.
Thanks a
I-
lot, Pawan.
yeah.
That was a very interesting example that you gave. May I request Sohini to take the next question? What do you see as the highest challenges and the biggest opportunity in the area over the next 3 to 5 years? Sohini?
I think the opportunities and the challenge can be the same, right? In my head, I think I think on one hand, there is a lot of optimism when it comes to AI. Governments are investing a lot on AI. We had the AI India summit very recently in India. There are a lot of organizations that are, innovating when it comes to AI. So there is a lot of optimism, and because AI makes it possible to, in a way, democratize knowledge. So just as a in the palm of a hand, I can type something, go on an AI platform and quickly get information, which in a traditional sense I would have taken some time to read a book and get that answer to, right? So there is that optimism that people have, but there is also that challenge that, again, I'm thinking more from an evaluation perspective, because that's my job, that's my day role, is in the spirit of optimism, there is also that challenge that, so in my head, the way this should work is essentially you should first diagnose the problem with local and global context, whatever the problem that an organization or a government is dealing with, whether it is learning outcomes, whether it is health, whether it is climate change, whatever that they are trying to solve for. Co-design, and even if they want to leverage AI, co-design the AI enhanced program, run a pilot with an evaluation that they are planning to do, then essentially learn and share results. And then based on the results, whether it is working or not, whether they are able to ensure last mile delivery, to ensure that they are reaching the people, they are not doing any harm, so on and so forth. That's when they are scaling up the program or scaling down the program based on the measured impact, right? So that's how I would want to think of it, right? But we know that in reality, in that optimism, people are not necessarily following that trajectory, and we are jumping to either overuse AI or kind of underuse AI. That there are also times where we kind of say that AI is all bad, right? So again, I think what I'm trying to say, it depends, right? It depends on the context. We need to be able to evaluate it and be able to know whether it works or not. And based on that, we scale the program. So I would kind of focus on that. For me, in the next 3 to 5 years, I think there is that potential, but it can also go the other direction if we are not careful.
Thanks a lot, Sohini. May I direct the next question to Gayatri? Gayatri, sorry, this is a very lengthy question. In a skill development program, AI can efficiently track attendance, assessments, placements, and learner progress. How do we ensure that evaluation systems do not overvalue easily measurable indicators while overlooking critical outcomes such as employability, readiness, confidence, workplace behavior, and long term career progression?
I so agree with the question. So I think my one line is I'm very worried about that. And because the measurable is, as very rightly said, is exactly the metric, right? And it leaves out exactly what is needed for a job, what is needed for a career. Agency, for example, how does one measure? Is it taught in a classroom in a short period of time? So assessment methodologies which are more complex, time, motion, dexterity, even at a domain level, I think it struggles to capture, and eventually it will get replaced. I think Pawan rightly said, I mean, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing factory after factory replace, large manufacturing replace humans in different, you see it in warehouses in a large scale, which is happening, but it's happening. The tailoring example, I think many people are experimenting. Cutters, for example, the cutting. I'm just going with the tailoring, Pavan, but I've seen machines which cut much better than humans, and they're better for the planet because cloth is not what they use, and this can be reused. This is becoming more and more popular. But as I said, one of the things we need to do is possibly turn it on its head. Education and skills in the traditional training method have not delivered the values that we want our people to have. So young people in education systems, um, um, especially from disadvantaged backgrounds, are already in severe digital poverty. So I think this is one opportunity for us to actually, probably, as I had said, I am, for example, very excited about the hyperlocal. If we're able to turn it around and use apprenticeship as a modality of training, then we will co-create a lot of it. Now here, one has to be careful, right? When you co-create, not everything in the community is the right thing either. So one has to look at what is it that one will intentionally do. So AI we should use, in my mind, literally like I was just, as everybody was talking, I was writing and I was thinking to myself, the best analogy which comes to my mind is, when vehicles are stuck, more and more people identify that the vehicle is stuck. It transmits it back. So something like that we have to do to get the softer elements in place. Otherwise, it will always be quantitative. And I started the 1 minute that I said with the absolute horrific experience that we had, where it really did the quantitative element and dismissed an entire program, which in my mind was a tough one, and where girls and families and young people had taken time out by just judging them as not good. Because the evaluators is a system. The calling is done by a chatbot, robot chatbot, or whatever they call it. And then the metrics also will go that direction. So efficiency it will bring, but we have to temper that efficiency with with the ability to really, read how much do we want to go that direction or how much not. That's a human decision.
Thanks a lot, Gayatri. We have few more questions, but in interest of time, I'll just ask one last question and request a quick response on this. And anybody from the panel can take up this question. As AI is becoming more of technology adoption, and what would a framework for ethical AI adoption in social sector look like? Um, Anuga, may I request you to come in, because I think it'll be nice if you can take it from the user perspective on this.
Yeah, sure. Again, not a lot of experience from social sector, so can't lay out a framework as such, but just in terms of a recommendation for the other users is also just trying and understanding where these AI systems are being used. So even if you're prompting stuff, know that always your prompt is attributed to a certain token, and that token uses X amount of water and climate and whatnot to give you an answer, right? So not just use it as a simple Google search and just use it freely and just because it's available, but with a little bit of caution is what I would recommend, just in terms of how users can interact with AI in a little bit more regulated manner.
Thanks a lot, Anaga.
I would try and build a little more, if there is time, a few things on this.
Sure, Sonia, just, but we'll have to quickly wrap up.
Okay. So I'd say that as a philanthropist, oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I'm saying as a philanthropy, what we try to do is, in our evaluation practices, we use the tool of AI, and actually, when we do the field visits, we use that tool on the field to when we engage with the communities to build in that construct within our evaluation phase, right? And that actually is it helps us. One is to get the lived experiences of communities on ground, and second, it also informs our internal evaluation. So I feel that that has to be done, and we do quite some grants. So if it's done grant after grant after grant, there will be a frame that will emerge.
Thanks a lot, Sonia, for that. May I request Likita to come in?
Thank you, Raj. Before we move to the words of gratitude, shall we take a quick group picture? If possible, could all our panelists please switch on your cameras for a moment? Thank you, everyone. I was super excited to be part of the webinar. I have learned and unlearned a lot of things. I'm now handing over to Sumati to share our few words of gratitude. Over to you, Sumati.
Thank you, Likita. Thank you so much, everyone, for patiently listening with us. The last 90 minutes were packed with power on AI, its use, misuse, and abuse. I personally found this session super engaging, and hence my thank yous are going to be profuse. Thank you to all the speakers, Gayatri, Anaga, Shohini, Sonia, Pavan, Suren, and Arjun, who gave us time to be here and share their thoughts and experiences. You were powerful. Thank you, Team Global. Thank you, Team Glocal, for being an amazing partner. Thank you, Priya, for the words on Durga, our take on AI, and for the panel moderation. Thank you, Monica, Raj, Vibhu, and Bhumika for working on backend to ensure everything is seamless. Thank you particularly to our manager, Priyamani, for the continuous effort to nourish us with her food. Thank you, Team Durga, for all the love and support as we ran the event. Thank you, everyone, once again. Have a lovely Friday night and an amazing weekend. Look after yourself. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. Good
Thank you
night.
so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Good
much,
night.
everyone.